Hi, my name is Faizan Imtiaz, and I am an assistant professor of organizational psychology at Towson University of Maryland. I will be guiding you through a series of short webinars and discussions on resilience and how we can maximize our performance from a psychological perspective. Today, I want to talk about the psychological source of fear and apprehension, and more specifically, how we can reframe this to actually benefit from it and improve our performance. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past several weeks, you know that there is a lot of fear in the air right now, especially in how it relates to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. And rightfully so. I think for many of us, this is likely the most serious global event that we've experienced in our lives. However, beyond our current events, there are many situations in our work and personal lives that, even though they're not nearly as serious as this, evoke the same fearful and apprehensive response. And so how can we deal with these situations a little bit better? Psychologists have been studying these issues for several decades, and across a lot of pressure-laden situations in sport and business, they've come at the common denominator, and it seems to be uncertainty. Human beings appear to have an inherent dislike for anything that's remotely uncertain. Let me give you an example. There was a recent study done at the University College in London where the researchers had participants engage in a strategy game where they had to make a number of decisions that either led to a small reward or a small shock. Now, the game was set up in a way that after a bunch of trials, participants knew the likelihood of getting the reward or the shock. So they knew percentage-wise how likely it was that they would be getting a small shock if they made a mistake. Now, this setting led to two interesting findings. One was expected, one was very surprising. Expectedly, what the researchers found was that when participants knew that they had a 50% chance of getting a small shock, this evoked a stronger stress response than when they had a 0 or 10% chance of getting a shock. That's what we would expect. The more likelihood there is of a negative event, the more stress response. But surprisingly, and more interestingly, they also found that when participants had a 50% chance of the negative shock, they had a stronger stress response than when they had a 90 or 100% chance of the negative event. Now, this doesn't make any sense. Why would a 50-50 chance be more stressful than a guaranteed negative outcome? After all, in the first example, you can get off scot-free. There's a 50% chance you might not experience any harm. They probed a little bit deeper, and what they found is that when there's any kind of uncertainty in the air, our brain signals to our body to ramp up the sympathetic nervous system and the fight or flight response. This involves stress hormones and adrenaline and a lot of resources to help us get ready for action. Now, in business and sport, this is a good thing. When there's uncertainty, you want to take action, you want to respond. However, in certain contexts, there's not much you can do. For example, right now, even though it's fearful, there's not much you can do about the situation. And actually, the advice that we're getting from the medical and policy people is that the best thing to do is actually to wait for the situation to resolve and not to take any action. So this is really important for us to know because this awareness will help us accept this anxiety a little bit better. If you have this awareness, then you can know that we're wired to respond this way to uncertainty, and we can be a little bit more accepting of that fact. This is one way to cope with uncertainty. The other ways are through factors such as relaxation and strategic recovery. And these are the things that we will be getting into over these series of webinars, and hopefully at the end of it, they'll help us enhance in our overall resilience.